Welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. We have a very nice discussion and demo in store for you today. So just a quick context behind the theme for the webinar. It actually started with a decentralized credit app that was built by Knoldus. And as we were discussing a roadmap to adoption, we ended up creating a roadmap of sorts on how to use smart contracts and blockchain. How do we get started with the adoption? Can we go to decentralized right off the bat? Or should there be some other incremental steps that we need to take? So we came up with a 3-step roadmap, and we'll cover that roadmap, of course, towards the end of the webinar. But briefly, the roadmap sort of showed us that we need to first address challenges within the enterprise and how smart contracts can help with that. Once we've done that, then we can go to solving some challenges that have traditionally been looked at when it comes to smart contracts and blockchain, to look at challenges between two enterprises when two enterprises interact with each other. However, those obviously require more strategic level conversations, alignment between corporate strategies and all of that stuff. So it's a little difficult to achieve. So we made that a step 2 of the roadmap. And at the end, of course, finally, once we've done that, then there's the option to move towards a fully decentralized model, which is probably anyway going to be an integral part of this connected digital world that we live in. So there's some parts of it that are always going to be decentralized, and that's where we end up being at the end of the roadmap. So that's what we are going to be covering. So smart contracts and blockchain. How do you use them within the enterprise? How do you use them between two different enterprises? What kind of innovations are possible with that? And then obviously we'll end up with a nice demo of the decentralized credit app that Knoldus has built up. Just a quick logistical item. So we definitely have a recording, and I will try to send out the recording latest by tomorrow to everyone on the webinar. Also, please post your questions in the Q&A area. I'll try to take a look at them and post them to the panelists at the right time, and hopefully we can discuss them during the webinar. If not, we'll definitely follow up with you at the end. So then, without further ado, then let me introduce our panelists for today, who will share their insights into these important areas. And my hope is that you will walk away with some new things to think about when you think about smart contracts and lending and blockchain and topics related to that. So first, I'd like to welcome Nirajkumar. He's the Executive Director for Virinci. Among other things, Virinci is a fintech that makes products for the underserved and underbanked segment. And most relevant for today's discussion would be the Q-Fund product that's aimed at lending that Niraj is going to talk about and share his experiences on. So Niraj, would you like to say hello and maybe introduce Q-Fund briefly?
Hello everyone, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in which part of the world. So like Manish said, Virinci is a fintech company amongst some of the other things we do. We are a public company listed on the Indian Stock Exchange. We have a number of fin-related software. One is a buy now, pay later platform called PayEasy. We have also recently launched a virtual/mobile app based line of credit product called V-Card in India, which is gaining some traction. But for the purposes of today's discussion, I will focus on our experiences with our US-based loan management software called Q-Fund. So we've had this LMS in the US market for close to 20 years now. And it basically covers the entire loan lifecycle, from loan origination to servicing and all the way to settlement or collections. So I'll briefly talk to you about the various interactions with different third parties, legacy platforms, etc., that lead to some of the challenges that we'll be discussing in today's webinar. Just to give you a sense of our scale, right? At Q-Fund, we have served 12 million unique customers with over $10 billion worth of loans in the past 5 years alone, which is more than 40 million transactions. So I look forward to sharing our experiences, some of the challenges we faced, as well as some of the innovations that are happening in this in our fintech world in this space. So I'm excited about it, and I hope you will get something out of it. Back to you, Manish.
Yeah, thank you, Niraj. And now I'd like to introduce our guests from Knoldus. So first off, Krishna Singh, he's the solutions leader at Knoldus. He's also going to be demoing the decentralized credit app that we developed. that Knoldus developed. And then, of course, I've got Atul Rawat with me. He's VP of Operations at Knoldus, and he's going to be sharing some of his insights with when it comes to multi-party workflows and the innovations that are possible with smart contracts. Atul, and do you want to say hello and maybe introduce Knoldus for a minute? Atul, you are on mute.
Hey, sorry. Can you hear me fine?
Yeah, we can. We can.
All right. Thanks. Sorry for that problem. Hello, everyone, and good morning, good evening. Um, so, um, so Knoldus, we are a team of passionate technologists with a product mindset. We work in emerging technology space and work very closely with global businesses across domain and industry verticals to deliver compelling solution. Obviously, keeping in mind the business challenges and provide competitive advantages. As you see in the screen, our main capabilities are, of course, in the blockchain space, and into the reactive products, IoT, microservices, API, data science, data engineering, and obviously on the horizontal practices, DevOps, agile transformation, etc. Um, we also have our strategic partnership, with the likes of Databricks, Lightbend, Confluent, and many more to deliver the value for our clients. Obviously, today we have lined up the demo for Decredit, as Manish talked about. So I look forward to have a very active interaction with you all. Thanks, Manish.
Yeah, thank you very much, Atul. Before we start, let me actually launch a couple of polls just to understand who's among the audience. So we can just, tailor the conversations a little bit. Simple polls with, what your experience is in that space. So let me launch the first poll. Um, let's see. Okay. Can everybody see the screen in the audience? Okay, great. Yeah. So most of you seem to be smart contracts and DLT enthusiasts so far. Okay, I think. Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, let me close the poll now and share the results with everyone. So we've got 73% smart contracts DLT enthusiasts, which is good to know. And then of course one of you works for a lending software provider, which is great. And then two of you others. So we'll probably have to dig into that a little bit later. So there's just one more question I wanted to bring up, which is your current experience with this tech. So let's relaunch this poll. Um, so just to understand how well you know smart contracts and blockchain already. Okay. Okay, that's great. Yeah, let me share the results then. So it looks like 50-50 between folks who are new to smart contracts and DLT. So, and obviously 50% or almost 50% on you have some experience looking to learn more. And then a couple of you have, obviously you're actively engaged. So that's good to know. And then, we can obviously, so we'll tailor the conversations accordingly. So with that, let me set up the problem statement, which is simply that islands exist between as well as within enterprises. So traditionally, we've seen blockchain as a solution to bridge data silos or bridge gaps between two different organizations. But smart contracts, obviously, especially DAML smart contracts, can help bridge those silos within the enterprise as well. And the problem here is that every enterprise and every department relies on multi-party workflows. That's the name of the game. Every business process is a series of activities that which must be carried out. Typically, those are different applications that carry out the business process. And every application, for the most part, has its own data stores, and they try to keep in sync with the other application, through the use of APIs or file transfers. And, almost every enterprise has built up an entire infrastructure just to cater to that constant reconciliation and checks and balances that must happen between organizations. So that's the problem that we are starting out with. The problem statement is that, and as soon as something breaks, there's always, there's an increased risk of, customer experience, whether it's financial risk, it could be liability, or, it could be just that, important timelines and dates are missed when it comes to activities such as payments and various other things. More importantly, I think there's also no workflows, so workflows are there, but they are agreed in principle. So you can never have a workflow in your hands. It's always in a presentation or in a diagram. And obviously, because of that, there are islands, both between within the enterprise, as well as between two companies or between multiple companies that are engaged in executing a business process. So Neeraj and Atul, do you have any comments on that quickly?
Sure. So like I was saying earlier, right? So we are an LMS, and if you think about how we operate, right, we coexist in a very complex ecosystem. So we at any point in time we are interacting with the bank or the lenders, legacy systems, some of which might have come due to acquisitions, mergers, etc. Right? So we have lenders who have a new application for their loan management, but they're still carrying some of the traditional legacy stuff that they have acquired maybe or they had in the past, which they haven't really gotten rid of, even after multiple years. And then you have the external third parties that we interact with. It could be your credit rating agencies, Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. It could be payment processors. It could be lead providers. Um, there's a number of customer communication things that we do. We could just be integrated with back office things, devices, printers, scanners, uh, BI and reporting. So the ecosystem is complex. There's a number of different interactions that happen. And what is important to understand here is that each of these parties may use different technologies, different standards. So their data requirements are different. So every time there is some level of customization required. And whenever there's customization, they end up managing their own copy of the data, like you said, Manish, right? And that is where these islands exists, and some of the problems that we talk or are going to talk about will come to the fore.
Yeah, exactly. Atul, do you have a comment quickly on this?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I agree. I mean, if we look at the lending space, today, I mean, it's almost, what, 7,000 billion odd dollar kind of a, industry in itself. And I agree, with Neeraj in terms of the multiple complexities that exist today, whether it is in terms of multiple workflow that Manish you alluded earlier, or multiple handoffs. There are different stakeholders, right? The creditors, the lenders, and again, this is a highly regulatory sort of a space. And then again, within the regulation, you have a country level regulation and multiple other sort of regulatory requirement, and hence it becomes absolutely important that how you actually able to synthesize all that. So, but it's very important to understand these complexities, issues with the front office, back office, how these they interact with each other, so that the overall process for the end customer is actually smooth, and seamless without any issues.
Yeah, got it, Atul. Okay, I think there are a couple of questions which I'm unable to get to right now. So yeah, let me get to the next slide, and then I'll get back to those. So continuing with the theme, then let's look at within the enterprise first. So this maps well with the roadmap as well. So what are the islands within the enterprise? And as you can see, anybody who's worked in the enterprise space knows that any business process is a series of activities, and those activities are obviously done by multiple applications. In this case, you see loan application is received, it's underwritten, then you have to service and receive payments on it. You have to probably, hopefully not, but in many cases, obviously, you have to deal with collections. You have to deal with customer service, and obviously, every enterprise is also aspiring to engage in cross sell as well as upsell to customers both during application as well as during the life cycle of the loan. And each of these, because of this, there are multiple applications that service all of these things, and there's a lot of data back and forth that is happening between different applications. In some cases, and Neeraj, I think you might want to comment on this. QFund is a fully packaged app, of course, but in many complex organizations, many complex organizations may or may not be able to follow it or follow a centralized model, primarily because it's not because they don't want to, but it's just because of how business evolves. Different geographies, different customer segments, different products, acquisitions, etc. So, what do you think on this?
Absolutely. So in our case, at least when we are working with a bank or a lender, so it may vary from lender to lender, but for a specific bank that we work with, the issues that we face are not around data corruption or data loss, because pretty much we have the data. The challenges come from creating different views of the same data for different audiences, right? There'll be different workflows. So you can understand, for example, a management report will need different views of the same data as opposed to an underwriting system or a regulatory report, because the purpose of each of these data requests are different, right? So how they slice and dice the data and look at it differently is the issue there, rather than not having a single view of that customer or of that data. So, but at least
Exactly.
in the lending industry today, right? So there's a big push towards having an omni-channel experience. What does that mean? It means that, for example, and I'll take a customer here because it's easier to understand. So the customer has the same experience, or should have. Maybe in most cases we don't have that, but the idea is, or the ideal goal is, that the customer has the same experience across different touch points. So if you think about how a bank or a lender might reach customers, it could be online, it could be through their mobile device, it could be them walking to a branch, even text messaging and email that you do. Sometimes these are not in sync with each other, so what a branch personnel might see for a customer might not be the same as what they see online themselves, or what a centralized call center might see. So that is the ideal goal that we want to move to, and which is where these data silos kind of come into play.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Yeah,
Right.
that makes sense. And
I agree.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Atul. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think I agree. I mean, in terms of, so important thing is that how we are able to actually recognize these different data silos. Because obviously, the processes, for example, if you look at the underwriting one, right, to be it, syndicate lending or a single lending, or, once you get the loan, there are securitized or, collateral lending as well, that sort of takes place. And therefore, important thing is that how to identify those, silos, and then sort of, ultimately how we can actually look at eliminating the manual sort of intervention, and have technology sort of play a more important role in terms of ensuring a seamless collaboration with the, with the front office, middle office, and back office that we talked about.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the primary challenge then is within the enterprise. Can you use smart contracts to, to actually bridge all of these different islands so that everyone has access to the same state of data while maintaining the privacy? Because some of these departments may or may not want to know, may or may not want to disclose everything that's happening to the other department, for example. But still, I think they need to have a single state of the data so that they are not out of sync at the same time. So I think that's the challenge, and that's what smart contracts can help accomplish. So that's within the enterprise now. So let's move on to interactions across enterprises, which sort of, as you may have guessed, the challenges are similar as we strive to maintain and reconcile multiple different data stores. So, the technology is, we have enough, good advanced technology right now. For example, APIs. Most of our enterprises interact with each other through APIs, but that doesn't still solve the challenge of multiple data stores. They are still not going away because both the caller and the callee have their own data stores that they then update based on the results of the API call. And so this is not just a technology architecture challenge though. So, how do we need to think about this, for example? So Neeraj, do you have any comments?
Sure. And then look, the challenges when it comes to data being passed across different enterprises or different systems. are slightly more difficult, right? And I'll give you a very simple example of how this plays out. So like I said, we work with credit rating agencies, for example, or third-party services. So let's take a simple example of I have a customer for whom I want to pass on information to another third party, right? I might have 10 different fields for that customer. It could be, they could have their income details, where they live, their social security number and whatnot. And obviously we're talking within regulations, what you can share and what you cannot share. But the receiving party might not have those 10 fields. They might have 8 fields, or they might have 5 other fields that I don't have. For example, a customer might have 2 income sources. So let's say I have 2 jobs, and I have one job where I earn $1,000 a month and another job where I earn $500 a month. So in my system, I see this customer as somebody who has a $1,500 monthly income. But if the receiving party only has one data field for income, now suddenly that receiving party sees me as a different customer, because now I'm only earning $1,000 as opposed to $1,500. Sometimes you might have things like, when you do payment processing, multiple bank account information, and so on and so forth. So this is where data loss happens. Sometimes it's not really that data uh, uh, changed, it's just that data got lost. And that is where the interaction between enterprises is difficult, because everybody has their own data sets, their data feeds, right?
Yeah.
And those challenges come to the fore when it's sort of interaction between enterprises.
Exactly. And I think when you spoke about credit management, I think almost all of us have faced it as consumers. Our information is not the same across the credit reporting agencies that we deal with.
Absolutely. Even if you think about just 3 credit rating agencies we have,
Yeah.
The way, just the information that they have, obviously they have different algorithms in terms of how they score you, but just the information that they have is different, so they don't have the exact copy of your information. They have different copies of your information, and that is where some of the differences in scores come about.
Yeah. Yeah. Atul, you want to comment on this quickly?
Sure, Manish. So I think it is. So I think part of the problem that Manish had called out already, but yeah, not only just the kind of data, but the disparate data sources that we have, while actually interacting with across the enterprises, right? I think that is also sort of poses the challenges. And obviously, if you look at these different functions, obviously there are certain rules, regulatory requirement, etc., that sort of prohibit certain exchange of data. And therefore, it becomes very important how to share a part of the data which is actually useful for a particular transaction, in this lending space, or any other particular, industry space that we're talking of. So yes, I mean, disparate data sources is across the enterprises, obviously poses a great challenge, to ensure that we get seamless, processing for the business.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously, the boxes that you see on the slide are not exhaustive. Of course, we listed out some examples. So loans can be transferred, for example, that loan transfer happens between 2 different organizations. We've seen how painful that can be sometimes. A lot of stuff happens in the background we are not aware of. We see the end result, but we also see when the process doesn't work, as expected. Um, so let's get to the foundation of this webinar is how do we use smart contracts, and what smart contracts do. Especially, we are going to be talking in the context of DAML, today. They maintain privacy. Obviously, privacy is very important when it comes to interacting between 2 different companies or 2 different enterprises. But it's also sometimes important when you're dealing with 2 different departments, which do not, always have to see complete customer information. For example, somebody who's cross-selling doesn't need to know customer balances, for example, so stuff like that. So how do you maintain privacy, but still give all of these stakeholders and different companies access to a single golden source of data? So that's what smart contracts can bring. And as you've seen, there is potential both within the enterprise as well as obviously workflows between 2 enterprises as well. And that brings us to quick summary of what is how does this tech stack look like? So a lot of you are obviously enthusiasts with smart contracts and blockchain. So I think you'll appreciate this slide. DAML smart contracts, there are two or three, key properties that I wanted to mention today. One is obviously, they'll help you. They are fit for purpose, so they are fit for multi-party workflow. So you're not using a general purpose language to define privacy and all of that stuff. That's all baked into the smart contract language. The other big property is that DAML is completely portable. So as you can see at the bottom, it runs on so many different ledgers or blockchains. And those DLTs and blockchains are useful when it comes to interacting between two enterprises. But if you are trying to implement smart contracts and improve collaboration within one enterprise, you may or may not want to use a blockchain, or a DLT because of the additional overhead it might entail. So you might want to use the properties of smart contracts, maintain privacy, but facilitate that collaboration while using your traditional databases. So DAML also runs, as you can see, on traditional databases as well. And of course, since it's the same application, if tomorrow you decide to switch databases or tomorrow you decide to switch blockchains, obviously your application and your front end, of course, is completely portable. And the second big property I wanted to talk about is interoperable. So which means that, you know, um, you might be deploying, or one part of the organization may be deploying something on DAML, maybe on a blockchain, while the second part of the enterprise or another enterprise, for example, could be deploying their own network, either on a database or on a blockchain. What DAML does is it allows you to seamlessly transact across the two networks, atomically transact, which gives you complete interoperability between two different networks. So that's also a very important feature of how smart contracts can work, and how DAML especially makes that happen. And of course, DAML is obviously being used by pretty significant organizations. There are significant projects that are being executed today. So we'll cover that in a separate webinar, or maybe you can find that out on daml.com. But that with this foundation, it sets us up for a lot of innovation. So now that you've mapped and bridged silos and islands between enterprises as well as inside your enterprise, um, how do you how do you drive innovation? And some of these things that you see, you can drive KYC, obviously subject to regulations. One customer's KYC can be used by another lender, for example, or some parts of the KYC can be used. Regulatory reporting can be simplified. These are obviously the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot that goes under it, but once you have this foundation of a golden source of data, private, mutualized workflows, then obviously sky's the limit. Neeraj and Atul, do you have any comments on this?
No.
Yeah, I think I would like to add. No, so most of these, so if you look at the different business, processes, I think what is important is that how some of this actually runs in other industries as well. So KYC today is being used across the industry, right? And there could be from a consumer and corporate perspective, wherein you on the corporate side you might get 600 700 pages of KYC with a lot of things to be checked, and that is where I think some of the information that I think Manish shared in the previous slide I think can be helpful in ensuring that not only we are able to solve for the manual sort of intervention, but also how we can actually bring in elements of cross sharing of data, privacy of data, and that to ensure that that golden sort of data can be shared across the different stakeholders.
So Manish, I'd just like to add, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Neeraj.
So we obviously deal much more in the consumer lending space, right? So rather than the enterprise lending space. So KYC across lenders, for example, are subject to regulations. There is potential to innovate, especially if you have a common regulatory framework that you can follow and standardize the data processing. And the challenge for us is that is something that we cannot do at an LMS level or a private provider sort of level or even a bank level. That is something that comes, let's say, from a CRA level. So if there is standardized regulations around data collection and data reporting by, let's say, the credit rating agencies, So that's a different ballgame. Then you have some standardized procedures to follow. For example, if you look at how India has implemented recently Aadhaar or UPI, right? So that is closest to, in terms of current that I can think of, a standardized central repository from which lenders or LMSs or the third providers can benefit. So that's a very good sort of case study for us right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and obviously, this gets us talking about some of the futuristic things that are happening. So we've been talking forever about how do we give customers, ownership of their identity instead of them having to authenticate and their identity being kept at, multiple different organizations. How can customers carry their own identity with them and produce it on demand and get it verified on demand? So things like those are possible then, with this concept. And obviously, it brings us to decredit, which is decentralized lending, which Krishna, I'm going to pass it along to you to show how we can accomplish this marketplace where lenders, borrowers, multiple service providers can come together, and we can fully automate the process, and subject, of course, to the same regulatory requirements and compliance needs that are required in a feasible marketplace that works. So the bottom line here is, once we solve this problem, we can, bring our own unique advantages to the game instead of trying to use our innovation dollars to manage the underlying plumbing. I think that's I think the biggest difference that it brings. So quickly on the roadmap, so we saw how we can solve islands, or bridge islands within the enterprise. So that is the easiest first step to take if you're working for an enterprise. And if you see these challenges, which you will, multiple databases and, always constant reconciliations, you can obviously try to use, smart contracts within the enterprise, and then move on to the inter-enterprise workflows between two different companies. And then finally, obviously, which this, I think it's more like phase 3. It's like a component of your digital fabric where, some parts of it will always be decentralized. And by this, we mean that multiple ecosystems will come together and they can interact across different ecosystems. So one lender working with another lender on KYC, for example, or one customer, with decentralized identity, for example, so those are some of the things that can happen here, as well as lending. So Krishna, before I hand over to you, let me just quickly look at the Q&A tab. For some reason, it's not coming up. But why don't I hand over to you, Krishna, and then in the meanwhile, I'll look at the Q&A.
Sure, Manish. So hello everyone. So Decredit is basically a direct lending platform where legal agreements is established between parties and payments can be completed, and everything can be done on shared distributed ledger in real time. So we are trying to eliminate middlemen by creating direct lending platform where borrower and lender together come on platform and can deal with each other. Manish, next slide, please.
Yeah.
So in Decredit, we have primarily 3 different roles: borrower, validation authority, and lender. So borrower can request a loan and can select any one of proposal proposed by lender, and validation authority can verify user, can ban or unban them, and can do some other stuff, and can also create a verified request for all lenders. While lenders can check borrower's request and can propose offer to the borrower depending, on its profile. Manish, next slide, please.
Yeah. And yeah.
So this is a workflow between borrower and validator. First of all, borrower creates a profile, and after validator verifies profile, borrower can apply for a loan. Validator can also ban user if there is any violation. So as you can see here, borrower can initiate whole process by creating loan request. Then after verifying request, validator can ask borrower to transfer collateral to provided wallet address. Now borrower has to transfer money to the requested wallet and will provide transaction ID to the validator. After validator verifies transaction ID and approves the request, now it will be visible to all the lenders, as you can see here, selected by the borrowers. Next slide, please, Manish.
Yeah. And Krishna, we are just showing the origination workflow here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now once lender receives the request, he can either create proposal or mark it as he's not interested. Now different lender can quote different proposal, and now different proposal are visible to borrower. Now it's up to the borrower to choose any one of them or reject all of them. In case borrower selects any one of them, all proposal will get automatically archived and the final contract is created between lender and borrower. Now once the final agreement is established, borrower can receive the loan amount and then all the other further steps. Um, Manish, next slide, please. So we are using DAML to host our application. I think as it is a great option to build a scalable backend for SaaS application. So basically using DAML, we can deploy application backend in seconds, and it automatically generate application API and also user authentication and authorization policies are automatically generated as well. And we can also integrate third-party services without any hassle.
Yeah, so this is essentially the DAML cloud. So you can look at this at projectdaml.com, which is free to start, of course. So you can just simply write your DAML models, upload them to projectdaml.com, and you're up and running. So it's that simple actually. And you can also host your web front end that Krishna is going to show you in a couple of minutes, right on Project DAML. So you don't have any separate hosting infrastructures to worry about. So we are ready to go to demo, Krishna. Do you want to share your screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to stop sharing then.
Okay. Is my screen visible?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, so I will going to give a quick demo specifically about the loan origination process of our application. So let's begin. I already created few user for demo purpose. So let's log in as Alice borrower. So profile of Alice borrower is already verified by the validator. So now he can apply for a loan. From here, he can apply for a loan. He can provide the amount requirement, 1,000, time period, and collateral details.
Yeah, just a quick comment, Krishna, while you're doing this. So the UI that you see is open source. Actually, not this particular UI, but the template on which this is based is open source. It's called the DAML UI template. So if you go on to GitHub, developers among you, go to github.com/digitalasset and look for DAML UI template. You can download this React template and quickly configure it to work on your DAML model. So it doesn't require any extensive coding, just a little bit of configuration, and you can get a UI like this for your DAML models, which you can also host on Project DAML.
Okay, so I logged in as a validator. So as you can see now, validator can verify the request and will ask borrower to transfer the collateral by sending him some wallet address. Oops. Sorry for that.
So right
Now let's log in as a
collateral, right?
Sorry.
You're using crypto as the collateral in this case, but it can be any other physical collateral as well.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right now we are using collateral, but it can be anything.
Yeah. See, if we look at it, I mean, so yes, this one particular example, we use cryptocurrency as a collateral. But I mean, if you look at some of the use cases nowadays, land registration, getting digitization, so those could be, can be done as well. So it could be used for various, asset types as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so now now we have a validator wallet address. So borrower can transfer collateral and can provide transaction ID for that particular transaction. So let it be 1, 2, 3, 4. Now validator can verify the transaction ID. After clicking verify, this request will be visible to all the lenders which were selected by the borrower during the selection process, during the loan initialization process. Now let's log in as a first lender. As you can see, now the first lender can see the verified request. Now he can propose some offer to the Alice borrower. So he can see the details and can propose offer on the basis of that detail. So he proposed the interest rate of 12% to the borrower. Now let's log in as a second lender. So he can also propose some offer. That will be 13%. Now let's log in as a borrower. As you can see, borrower got the proposal from the first lender as well as the second lender. He can accept any one of them depending on the detail. So let's accept this one. So as soon as the borrower accepts this offer, it will create a final agreement between Alice and the first lender. So this was a quick demo of the loan origination process of our application. So over to you, Manish.
Yeah, thank you so much, Krishna. And Niraj, not sure if you noticed, I think, but the same workflow can also be used for, I was thinking leads management and bidding on the leads, right, by the various lenders.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again. Sorry about that. Okay, so okay, great. So yeah, thank you so much for the nice demo, Krishna. And it's obviously can be deployed on Project DAML. It was coded in DAML, of course. And wanted to get you back to this quick slide. So as we saw today, as we summarize, you can do it within the enterprise. Of course, you can deploy your contracts on a database. And a question came up from Daniel, which I wasn't able to get to before. The question is obviously, we can go from intra-enterprise to inter, etc. That's a great roadmap. But what about the roadmap within an enterprise when you have to modify all these applications to start using DAML? So obviously there are multiple approaches to that, Daniel. However, your core applications need not change. At the point of when they exchange data with each other, that is the point at which we can insert interaction with the DAML smart contract layer through APIs. So that in the first phase, when you're trying to prove out the value, you don't need to actually transform everything within your application landscape, but you can sort of play an integration game. And then slowly as you move forward, you could then include more and more functionality into your DAML smart contracts and sort of make it a more smart contract heavy landscape. And the same thing goes for inter-enterprise as well. So with that said, I think that brings us to the to a conclusion. And I'd like to say the first phase obviously gives you immediate return on investment, as you're thinking about use cases, and your ROI, return on investment, obviously accelerates as you keep moving to the right. It's, you can also think about it, when I heard it at an event last year, instead of thinking of it as an ROI, most enterprises also like to invest as IOR, which is invest on return. So you can show your returns, by in the enterprise, by executing simple use cases using smart contracts and DAML within the enterprise, and then you can invest further as you get those benefits. Neeraj, Atul, any last comments?
That IOR thing is very interesting. But it is true. Look, I mean, just if you just think in terms of risk reduction, right? Just think in terms of availability or transparency of data. Just in terms of whether data is able to flow on a real-time basis or it's clunky or whatnot, right? So just that itself gives that investment gives you return, right? So exactly. I'm going to use that IOR thing again, Manish. It's very interesting.
Yeah, great. Yeah, go ahead, Neeraj. Atul, do you have any last minute closing comments?
Sure. Thanks, Manish. I think, overall, if you look at, the kind of complexities, which is there as part of the, business processes, be it lending, the demo that we saw, or the similar, similar kind of businesses, when you have complexities within front office, middle office, back office, the different island, as Manish called, that exists. I mean, our experience of using DAML, was quite effective in terms of the application demo that you saw, because it really brings in, a lot of effectiveness in terms of managing some of these issues with regard to multiple, handoffs, using key data, still, keeping the privacy, etc. Infrastructure independence. So those kind of different functionalities really help in the improving the overall, the processes. So so that's been a real experience. In fact, we have been we have been now using it and in advanced talks with one of the cryptocurrency provider who now wants to use their crypto asset to use for lending as a product, the demo that you saw. So and likewise there are similar kind of use cases that we are currently in talks in terms of in the lending environment.
Perfect. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so that brings us to the end of the discussion today. Thank you everyone for joining, and I've recorded the webinar obviously, and I'm going to share a recording with you latest by tomorrow. Yeah, stay in touch and expect an email from me. Thank you very much, Atul, Neeraj, Krishna. Excellent discussion. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Manish. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Manish.
Thank you.